hoy, 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 hoy. Oh yeah. Ah, it is mine.
Hello? Yep, great. Look, thank you very much, everyone. And to those that may be listening in the future, thank you very much for supporting this event. In a way, this is an announcement for Pell Mell Studio that we are trying to do collective equipment for para academia. And that will structure up a fair portion of what we'll talk about towards the back end here. But first of all, we need to acknowledge our First Nations brothers and sisters. And, we need to continue to fight for justice. And I think the question of ontopolitics is very much wrapped up in the question of education. And hopefully, moving forward, we can infuse our projects in such a way that can try and imagine what a just Australia might look like moving forward. So, always was, always will be. This is the program. Very, very proud actually to be able to have networked with all of these entities and these persons that compose this stuff. We'll talk about maybe a bit of the history of para academia and its sort of extant literature a bit later in the piece. But really, a certain set of dedicated individuals for more than 30 years have been trying to prosecute the question of education and truth and knowledge, often being excluded, marginalised, sort of shipped out from official institutions of learning. And so the work that, this event, this FOPA event, is really nothing more than trying to construct a locus, a profile, so that we can hopefully try and grow a cultural sphere together moving forward. I think we need a lot more entities in the para-academic space. Things actually outside of the humanities potentially might be a good thing, like a School of Climate Science might be nice, like who knows what that could look like. So we have today Karen Charman from the Public Pedagogies Institute, going to be talking about the Knowledge Project and what the Institute is about there at Victoria University. We have John Noack as well from the Existentialist Society. They are the OGs really, the Existentialist Society. They've been around for a very long time. Tireless, thankless work really that they've done for how long, John? Like 40 years? There we go, right? And at the end of the day, there are so many other entities and figures that have sort of heard about too late, they were too busy to come on board. And so this little gathering that we've organised here is not a total picture of the dynamism of the sector. And I think that's something that's really important moving forward, that we try and further promote and communicate with each other about what is going on in this space. So from 5 p.m. each evening, we're going to have some free finger food, they're going to have some $5 drinks, and we're going to have representatives from Overland, Jacobin and Paris End talk about the contemporary situation today, and they are going to sort of do that through the prism of radical journalism. I trust you've all had a look at the program, and so it won't go too much further there, but which is to sort of say that I really do hope that all of us here can continue to support these entities moving forward, because a part of the inspiration of putting this together was this sort of feeling of individualized desperation that seems to prevail around what they call the academic precariat and so on and so forth. And people are just like desperately trying to get by, to maintain with their skills, their knowledge base, and not find themselves working for CGU insurance or something like this to just make a buck. So if we can create an ecosystem, I think that's going to be more than enough moving forward. So I've been a bit busy the last few days, and look, what I need to do before talking about tomorrow is sort of speak about what's happened yesterday. And Lucy McIntosh from 7th Gallery has basically done all the internet stuff, the social media stuff, the design stuff, and without that, I'm not sure how the word would have gotten out. So Lucy, thank you very much. I am hopeless with computers, and you have been a great source of strength, and it's thank you so much. Merlin over there, dear old buddy, he knows how to use chords and mixing desks and all sorts of fancy things like that as well. So thank you very much, brother. And yes, yeah, we'll give him a little round of applause too. And I'd also like to thank Will Bennett, who has a little sideshow here around his perfume project. He helped set up the last few days, and I'm very appreciative of Will's efforts to help pack in. So I should acknowledge Dario in the crowd here too, and so we've had a little bit of a conversation about what might a studio focused on collective equipment structure its thinking around, and we need to think like 2 generations from now, and I think that is the sort of the starting point for what we're going to have a look at just now. Is that we need to lay foundations, equipment, platforms, infrastructures, so that those that come after us find them usable, productive, they have the right kind of semiotic components, they have the right ethics, it has the right economies. And we can't really determine that in the first instance here, but I hope and trust as we sort of get through the slide deck here, what I'm talking about might make a little bit more sense. So this is quite a long passage. This is the only lengthy passage here, so I'll read it aloud. So the collective assemblages that are manifest in raised consciousness and struggles cannot have one axis alone, a fixed route on the basis of which solutions might be deduced according to an arborescent logic. It is only at the end of a process of living institutional analysis, that is to say, of politically and micropolitically engaged analysis, that one can discern what sort of rhizome they correspond to. This point cannot be insisted upon enough. From the moment one comes into contact with this type of machinic and institutional assemblage, all the micropolitics contaminate each other, that of the observed and that of the observer, that of the judge and that of the delinquent, that of the militant and that of the militated. The stakes become political at the deepest level of libido investment. Either one opts for the stratification of power, one's most intimate being included, or one agrees to follow the lines of flight of desire and to rid oneself of pre-established equipment, dominant redundancies, constraining significations. It is against this question that, failing to recognise it in it their genuine optional matter, every current problematic of social change, innovation, and collective experimentation stumbles. So that's Felix Guattari from Lines of Flight, and I'm just using that pointer there. I think this question of optional matter is discussed at some length in that text. I've got it here. I don't think I need to read any more lengthy passages, but also in his book, The Machinic Unconscious. And effectively, this question of the optional matter, it is this kind of, let's sort of say, this preceding state of affairs that naturally and always contingently exists before we sort of move into sort of semiotic regimes, into sort of economic regimes, into linguistic regimes. And this is something that I think is really quite important, because the question of collective equipment, like an example of that is something like a highway, for instance, right? Or what else could be a good example? Like a university as well. These things shape our perspective, and it's this question of like semiotic capture, that is like the meaning and the forms of signification that we sort of work within. And I think if we work together moving forward, we can sort of maybe sort of try and work with this question of optional matter, and as the sort of talk of the collective equipment that we'll get to in just a moment, this will be making some further sense. Am I being relatively clear to this point? Yeah, thank you. So for those that had a look at the About page on the website, there was a text there called the Para-Academic Handbook, and there's sort of like, things called like the Paraversity, all sorts of other terms that have been used to describe forms of knowledge transmission, education, and projects around pedagogy that have been used for a while. I'm sure Karen probably knows a lot more about this sort of stuff than myself, but the term is an academic term, para-academia, and I think it's a catch-all that is used to describe a set of practices of, as I sort of said, knowledge transmission and education outside of state institutions. What Ivan Illich would call like a sort of a convivial institutional arrangement. And this history is as old as time, in a way. The death of Socrates, right? He did not know. What didn't he know? He didn't know the sophistic practices, the mode of education of the corrupt Athenian polis of his time. And where was the academy? It was outside of the polis, right? And so I think these sorts of structural relations, these analogies, permeate any history of this sort of talk. So I would be happy to maybe take a couple of questions at the end, or to talk to anyone throughout the day. But the history that we're talking about is an interesting one. And like just recently, Adam Bartlett did a course at the MSCP called Education, a Priority of Philosophy. And this isn't Adam's quote, but it's an interesting one, right? And basically, do people really want the truth? Does that actually work for people? And I think something that I've observed in my time in this milieu in Melbourne is that we have people that are like earnestly committed to the truth. The like sophistry is dead to these people, and I think this is an important cultural resource that we have in our hands, and that we need to cherish these individuals and these entities that are prosecuting the case for truth, and not quote unquote bending the knee for whatever reasons they may choose to do that for. So this is a quote from an anonymous collective called Tikkun, and I think it's it's interesting in terms of what I might talk about soon with the question of networks. But when I was talking to someone this morning and talking about the nature of the educational situation today, and this situation shouldn't be one defined by zero-sum logics. University good, independent X, great. That's it's a silly way of thinking about things. And there's a notion from permaculture called ecotones, and an example of an ecotone is an estuary. So we have like a freshwater system, we have a saltwater system, and then we have like a brackish system, a brinish system. And what is preponderant as a characteristic with these estuarine systems is their proliferation and diversity of species. We have estuarine species, freshwater species, and saltwater species all operating within the estuarine moment. And I think that is like an image that we might be able to think about as we develop the conversation around para-academia in Melbourne and beyond today. How do we create flourishing in diverse systems where we can all live, where we can all have our little particularities, YouTube edutainment on one hand, the university doing its serious business on the other hand, and then whatever might be here in this estuarine scenario. I think this is something that is important to consider. So, what are the problems, right? So maybe rather than talking about problems, I just basically set this deck up, and I was just going to go speak from the heart and see what kind of came. I didn't get a script together, so my apologies if I'm a bit rambly and choppy. But so rather than talk about the negatives, and I think that's something that's been really great about this program, right? Is that there is none of the headings are why things are bad, why things are annoying, why I'm pissed off. It's a creative expressions of what people have as their capacities and skill sets, and that people want to and have chosen to express and create and deliver without resentment. And I think that's a really great thing. And there was a sort of another notion that I was thinking about talking here with the questions of problem is the little used term like malemployment. We know like unemployment and underemployment, but we also have this idea of malemployment. And I don't know who here is malemployed, but I think I can see a couple of people here that are malemployed, that if we can develop equipments and entities and systems and whatever they might look like, that can get us out of these problems of malemployment and into the space of actually working and committing to cultural enrichment, to our society at large. I think this could be a very good thing moving forward. We'll move on from problems because that's a bit sad. So what I'll do quickly is I'll just read something from Fernand Deligny, if you will allow me to do that. If any of you are familiar with him, or unfamiliar with him rather, he was a gentleman from the mid-20th century until he passed that worked with severely autistic children in post-war France that were without speech and were so difficult that they needed to be institutionalized. But his work is one of a beautiful spirit. And so I'll just sort of like read something from an essay of his called The Arachnean. And this relates to the question of networks. So the random chances of existence have led me to live within a network rather than otherwise, by which I mean in another mode. A network is a mode of being. It doesn't take much, a simple passive... So thus I've lived through the random chances of existence in a network rather than otherwise, and in randomness of what I choose to read, there is always some sort of network to be found. It's a bit like the story of the nook in the wall and the spider that ended up meeting there. If the spider indeed sought out the nook, we may also say that the nook was waiting. And it is true that I sometimes reach the point of telling myself that a network is waiting for me at every turn. The specific network of which I speak, Out Network, this is the network that he's helped construct with these autistic children, is almost 15 years old now, which for a network is quite an advanced age. And its project is to bring these autistic children into close contact. These days, I wonder if this project is not a pretense, the true project being the network itself, which is a mode of being. Actually, networks abound, and it does seem as though their proliferation reaches its peak in moments of historical events, which, according to Frederick Eagles, are products of a blind, unconscious form. They are intolerable, and it must be said that historical events are endowed with a propensity for being intolerable. It keeps going on, but I'd recommend reading that essay by Deligny. And the interesting thing that I'd like to sort of point out here is these days I wonder if this project is not a pretense. So he talks about ourselves as I think he says something like the human being is the being with a project. No, a conscious project. The human is a being with a conscious project, and what he sort of means by that is that these networks, these tacit relationships that he forms, and I reference this in the essay somewhat. When encountering the thought out project, the tacitness dies, and the tacit relationships have one of two fates. He says that there's either oblivion, where the network runs out of energy or speed or creativity, or that it becomes normative in some way, and that we have institutions emerge. And I think what we sort of see in the para-academic sphere at the moment is that we have a set of networks at play here. I don't think it would be fair to characterize any one particular entity that exists today as being sort of institutional in nature. I don't think if one of these entities lost its personnel, it would just sort of continue ad infinitum. So I think like the question of networks is a really important aspect to what we're talking about here today. And the notion of collective equipment. So like Guattari in his book, he talks about collective equipment in sort of like a negative sense. He was commissioned by the French state, I think in the 1960s, to perform an analysis for them on collective equipment. And this book, Lines of Flight, was a kind of the literary result of this research project for the French state. And I thought about the term collective counter-equipment as being something that might be appropriate for what it is that we might want to try and do here in para-academia, but it just sounded a bit too convoluted. And collective equipment sounds novel enough, but like really what we're talking about here is like infrastructure, platforms, these sorts of things that can try and provide consistency and solidarity for the para-academic entities that exist in the world today, such that we can move forward together. So we're in the situation now, and like Pell Mell Studio, we've got these two projects live at the moment. So lectures and events. It's a community calendar that sort of has a range of lectures and events that are posted on there. We have some plans for the site to make it more accessible and more interesting and more dynamic moving forward, but basically it's just like a single page site at the moment where you can go and check out what's happening in the para-academic scene, and here we are here at FOPA today, trying to take this off-the-shelf idea of a festival to try and again provide that focus and that concentration on those entities and individuals that are working in the sector today. We have two kind of publishing projects moving forward. These aren't launched yet, but basically offcuts.cloud is a project where we are going to try and develop an online community of letters. So let's imagine that you had a journal article that was rejected by a journal. It's sitting on your hard drive or in your desk. It's gathering dust. Well, let's publish it. Maybe you've written 70% of a paper and you got 5 bullet points left. You're not going to touch that again. Well, let's put that out there. Either way, what we're trying to figure out here is to reduce waste. The creative, intellectual waste that is produced by creative, engaged, and committed people. So who knows what this might look like, but this is something that we are going to try and stand up sometime in the year 2025. And pamphlet.review, that is going to maybe be a bit more of a complete ecosystem, let's sort of say. And the two sides of the the URL there is pamphlet. So we're looking for pamphlets, manifestos, screeds that sort of want to sort of take on the question of where do we want to go in the field of education today, para academia specifically, and then the review aspect is also maybe people that attend lectures like this or go to a 12-week course at one of these para-academic entities and want to sort of share their thoughts. Again, it's sort of like a collective kind of blog about sharing ideas and a site, not so much like a wiki, but who knows. Either way, reviewing what is there and demanding what we need. I think that is the fundamental purpose of that site there. So that is the Instagram handle for Pell Mell Studio. And I don't know how convincing I've been or whatever I'm coming across here as, but effectively we're putting out a kind of like an EOI for what we're calling the Collective Equipment Working Group. And this, I think, could be a really exciting project. And as you can sort of see, we've already done a little bit of stuff, but it's not enough. In fact, it's not new at all. It's all just basic ideas. So, there's only so much that a certain few individuals can do to try and think through these problems. And I think we need maximum creativity moving forward. And but then again, though, right? Like, it's never the new that's the problem, right? It's always the oldest of the old. So, what are you meant to do, right? Complain about using, anyway. I never get Norton. Like, seriously, it is expensive spam. It is so annoying. So, like any good sort of like communist cadre, right? We need to sort of talk about the correct political line here. So, I want to talk about the 5 Ps here, and I think a kind of an organising principle for some of these Ps relates first of all to principle, and then the second grouping function we will call praxis. So so I've been thinking about this stuff for a few years now, and I think this is where sort of my thinking has got to this point. And without further ado, then, so on the principle side, we have preconditions and we have policy. Okay, so as we sort of move through as this working group, I think we need to try and figure out what the preconditions are for a just and ethical cultural sphere moving forward. And if we want to call that para academia, let's call that para academia. But I think we can try and figure out some conditions that can maximize inclusivity and maximize the question of justice. So relative to that point, then we get to the point of policy, right? Whether we call that strategy and tactics, I don't know. But really, how do we relate to capital? How do we relate to the state? Do we only sort of focus ourselves within our own narrow communities? These are very important questions. So they're the two principal P's, and then the three other P's, we have publics, platforms, and prestige. And I mean, the question of developing publics is a very important one, and that is so how do we make this more engaging to a wider set of interests? So Will yesterday he goes, Matt, there's only going to be freaks here over the next several days, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of true actually. Yeah, it probably will be a pretty freaky set, and so like how do we get out of the freak show and into the sort of the public domain? I mean that in the nicest possible way, okay? And then so the question of platforms, right? So festivals, websites. Who knows what technologies we can create? Techne in the most brilliant sense of the word techne. Like who knows what we can make together? So that's another question. What can we leave to the next generation that is useful and not destructive? I think that's a critical element. And the question of prestige, or more so inclusive prestige. We sort of know about the kind of the instrumentalization of education, sort of outcomes focused stuff, like quantified outcomes, but what is maybe a more qualitative aspect to undergoing an education by truths? And I think this is something that relates to a question of prestige, social status, standing, dignity, all of these sorts of aspects. And so I think that is something that's really quite important moving forward. And I think that sort of brings me to the end of the talk here. I hope and trust that had some kind of structure to it. And if anyone has a question, please ask a question. But thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the entities. And I hope you have a lovely day today. And enjoy. Thank you.
Hello. Whoa. We've probably got about 5 minutes for questions, if anyone's got one.
Thank you. It's more, I guess, a comment and praise rather than a question. Thank you. You're really brave. This is really important. And that was really clear. Yeah, it was really good that it actually came from the top of the head and the heart, as opposed to something that was preformed, which you've obviously preformed for the last bunch of years anyway, so it's pretty natural. I just want to make one kind of comment on your concern around the newness of this or the oldness of this. I think by the very nature of it happening, again, it's new. That's how novelty works. It's how creativity is. As long as it's actually engaged and real, it's new. So, making it new again, maybe the slogan, get a little red hat.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the question of the optional matter that was referred to before. Those crystallizations, those assemblages, like how do we take up the ethico-aesthetic import and imperative of these, let's call them, say, novelties, even if they're not necessarily inspired by anything particularly new, but can we ramify that? I think that's the question. So thank you for your lovely comment, mate. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks.
Sorry, Brendan.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, mate. Go ahead, yeah. I was just going to say, I trust and expect that the actual sort of professional public speakers and educators and thinkers will, make you feel like you've actually spent your money wisely before coming here. But Brendan,
Thanks, mate. I feel as though I've got full value already.
beautiful.
Yeah, I'm saying congratulations and thanks for the consciousness raising language that you're using. I think it's excellent. You're very relaxed, so that helps a lot. I'm just thinking about how fantastic it is that you found this venue and it's relocated to the market. Located near the market. So, of course, we have economia, this Greek word for the economy of conjugal relations, family relations in the extended family, if you like, the village, where everyone knows everyone's related, through to modern economy of Homo economist, where we're but cogs in the economic machine. And then we're possibly in this post-liberal phase now of finding a new economy, a contributory economy, whereby we, as you were saying, conduct less malpractice. Somehow or other we do. See, what we're doing is not just getting by, subsisting, but we're creating creative futures. So just a comment about this being located at the market rather than in a corporate institution
I think it's a good thing.
Or a church.
Yeah, no, thank you, mate. It's a good thing to actually point out. So we initially booked a bunch of other venues, but this place turned out to be a quarter of what the Wheeler Centre was for one day, for instance, right? Which is bizarre. We got this place for a week. So let's sort of talk about, the economics of this event. Like, how do you come up with the ticket price? We came up with the median hourly wage in May last year. Maybe some of the mal-employed or the underemployed, that's quite a lot to earn an hour. But then there'll be some people here that do earn that. We just thought that was the most equitable quotient of money that we could sort of think about that could potentially make this project viable. This project is that there's a pure profit share to all entities participating. There's no profit to be had. There's just equal distribution of whatever comes through the door from the ticket sales. So I think, banging on before about, how we're going to sort of do justice and ethics and all of that sort of stuff, right? I think, hopefully by, pursuing collective practices as best as possible, we can try and provide some, tiny example of what we can potentially do together moving forward. So, look, thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate your being here. And Karen Charman from the Public Pedagogies Institute, she'll be up in 40 minutes from now. And if you haven't had a look, pop downstairs. There's some sort of wax encased perfumes there. Take the lid off, have a spray. They're quite intense, so maybe don't put it on yourself like straight away first. And there's also down the far end, there's a room there where there's a QR code. And basically, I forget what we're calling it, but it's basically like indexing the moment or something like this. And We basically want to produce an anonymously authored, collectively authored index. So whether that relates to your work as an artist, your work as an academic, a book that you're reading, whether it relates to the Australia-India test series, it doesn't really matter, right? Just whack it all in there. And we hope to stylize that and structure that and present that at some point moving forward. And, that could be a very nice thing. Who knows? And, and then just downstairs, I think tomorrow it's meant to be like really, really warm. It's quite cool down there, and there's some seats and what have you. So please just like walk around, just respect the place. I'm not saying you're not going to disrespect the place, but just explore, like open doors, have a poke around. Like it's a fun sort of space. So thank you guys, and all the best.